It is time for Over There with Mirella Rastorfer. Mirella is our European correspondent. She joins us weekly. I'm still guessing Switzerland, but nothing is forever and nothing is for sure. Hi, Mirella. How are you?
Hi, Jill. Very well, thank you. Yes, from Switzerland, but with a conversation piece about France, about a book actually that I think is really worth mentioning. As we all know, there is a before and after when it comes to the Me Too movement. But there is a specific situation in France that is probably linked to the effect of the movement and still is a very unique story. So the book I'm talking about is called Le Consentement, which means the consent, and it's from Vanessa Springora. It's her first book. She's a director of an edition company in France, the Édition Julliard. This is an extremely strong and powerful book that tells her story in the 80s, how she was seduced when she was 13 by a man that was 50, that was a very well-known author and writer in Paris. His name is Gabriel Matzneff. And their story that lasts about 2 years. The most surprising is perhaps the fact that everybody knew it in Paris. Gabriel Matzneff was at the time really a very well-known personality who not only was well known for his appetite for young children, but he also absolutely wrote about it. So he was not hiding in any way. He was literally writing about it. His stories talk actually about him having sex with boys and girls under 16, because that was some kind of prerequisite for him. And everything is very well documented in a book called Les moins de 16 ans, which means under 16 years old. The book of Vanessa makes the difference between rape and consent. And that's a very interesting part, because she doesn't want to talk about rape in that sense, because the manipulation was at a complete different level. She is in the book more talking about the fact that as a 13 years old girl that was 13 at the time and very vulnerable, because her mother did not really protect her and because her father was absent. It's noteworthy to mention the fact that she displays an incredible honesty in her book. She does say that she fell in love with him, and at least that she thought she did. And the letters, for example, that he kept writing her during that relationship flattered her and touched her. And it was only after a certain process that she finally opened up her eyes and understood why she was feeling so unhappy and basically so desperate. And maybe this entire process actually began the day she read his books. the day she understood that he was traveling to the Philippines to have sex with young boys, sometimes between 8 years old and 13 years old. And one has really to put that in the context of a country, of a city that put him at the top of the list of their authors. He got prizes. Even 6 years ago, he got, in 2013, he got the Prix Renaudot. Everybody absolutely knew about his life and what he was writing about. The thing is that this was following a time in Paris in the 70s where there was a certain, I would say intelligentsia, a certain elite that thought things had to change. And some of them even wrote in 1977 a letter that was published in the famous paper Le Monde to plead for a change in the laws concerning sexual relationships between adults and minors. They wanted that to be a little bit more loose. And that was signed by very important and very well-known authors. And to just name a few, Roland Barthes, Simone de Beauvoir, Jean-Paul Sartre, they signed the letter, which was only the first of a second letter that was published the same year, where other authors, according to Vanessa Springora, also signed, like Françoise Dolto or Jacques Derrida, plus 80 others. So this was really a time where things were very blurry and where a certain part of the society felt that they had some rights that others didn't have, but that would be today, I guess, called pedophilia. 30 years later, the papers who published those letters apologized. And one of the leitmotif that comes back every time is the fact that they excuse themselves by saying that the media are only the reflection of the time being. So this is, of course, something that is today very debatable, but at the time was just a reality. His most recent book from Matzneff is called The Mistress of the Arsenal, and it came out in the prestigious Collection Blanche white collection of at Gallimard, which is a very prestigious publishing house. He also had a column in Le Point, which is a very well-respected magazine in France. So there is absolutely no doubt that at the time all of this was accepted, and that, as he said to the New York Times interview, a fake diary is of no interest, he said, adding that in real writing, there has to be blood, there has to be sperm, there has to be life. So he is absolutely convinced that what he did was something very natural somehow. And this makes this entire story extremely unique. He is supposed to be tried in 2021, where an association called the Blue Angel wants to prove that he was basically a pedophile, and it's very unclear what's going to happen. let's not forget also that he is today 83 years old, and that at this age, of course, 1 year is a very long time. So I thought that this story is especially relevant in today's event because of the roles of the media, because of the role of a certain intellectual elite, and because of the fact that there is still a difference in almost every country, from the legal point of view, between a consent that is among adults or a so-called consent between an adult and a minor. I think the author, Gabriel Matzneff, is at the moment out of Paris. He's somewhere in Italy. He has been really dropped by all his allies and friends, and obviously nobody wants to be associated with him. And I would say, to finish this conversation, that the question remains, yes, what he did is today absolutely not defendable. In many people's opinion, it was not even defendable at the time. So by judging him, it is probably the right thing to do. But then what about all the people who treated him at the time as the most precious or among the most precious writers that was living in Paris? This is definitely a form of hypocrisy, and I think it makes sense to ask if he is the only one responsible of what happened to Vanessa Springora when she was 13.
Thank you very much, Mirella Rastorfer. Over there.
My pleasure.